I have often thought that, I frequently, in these debates, like on Pal Talk with theists, I frequently say, well, there's a contradiction in your worldview, so therefore your worldview is false. And I've often thought, well, it's not as though I've worked everything out. It's kind of like the paradox of practice. So if somebody were to say, well, how do you account for this? And I say, well, I haven't really figured it out. It might be that there's an actual incoherence there that I haven't resolved, right? And I have to revise something, but I don't know what to revise.
Well, you can still point out that a specific thing in their worldview doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but, I mean, the problem is that there seems to be sometimes these sort of antinomanies that, Kant talks about. I mean, not necessarily the specific Kantian antinomanies, but like sort of, so for me, something like the exclusion problem would be something like an antinomany for me, unless you accept something like sort of the current view that I ascribe to or some other, potential solution to it. Because there seems to be good reasons to accept, all of these claims, but they're contradictory. So you can't accept all of them. But it seems at the same time sort of absurd to give up any one of them at the same time. So, it's possible it's the same thing with theism, It could be that there are very good reasons to be a theist, but, just we can't sort of finitely see it or something like that.
Well, there might be good reasons to be a theist, but those would all be, like, practical reasons or whatever. It wouldn't be due to theism making sense or something.
Well, I mean,
what Randian is saying is that there might be good reason for all the individual pieces of the theistic worldview when taken separately, but it's hard to get them to fit together, and it's not clear what you could drop.
Well, I don't see how the individual pieces are supposed to make sense then alone when they're put together.
It might be a bit too uncharitable, but I don't know.
Well, he's just supposing that might be the case. Just like in our worldview, there may be a lot of stuff that we haven't figured out, and there may even be real contradictions in some of the propositions, between some of the propositions we affirm, but it's not really clear what we would be willing to give up to resolve those contradictions because, the reasons we seem to have for holding to those propositions seem so strong. It seems very hard to give them.
Just take sort of the position that sort of the dialectic as it's developed so far in the whole discussion about intentionality, right? On the one hand, it seems like the Kripke plus argument as developed leads to a particular conclusion, but that conclusion just seems crazy, right, to a certain extent, to accepting. So you could try to give up, intentional realism, but it seems we have excellent reasons to hold to intentional realism. But at the same time, that means you have to give up one of the premises of the argument leading to intentional anti-realism. But then, which premise do you reject? It seems there's good reason to accept all of those premises as well. I think it's that type of situation that Jack is talking about, these sort of paradoxical.
Exactly.
I don't think that it's just the theist beliefs that don't make any sense. I think, like most the atheists on Pal Talk, I don't have any idea, like, how their stuff is supposed to work out.
Basically, everyone's just super confused and...
Yeah, well, actually, I do agree with Al about that most people just have very confused worldviews, and the degree of confusion seems to increase with the degree of stridency with which they defend the worldview. But it just still seems to me that there is a way in which maybe we would have to be more charitable to theism than we usually are, given that it's possible that in our own picture there's some real problems we haven't worked out. And so when I charge the theist, when I say to the theist, well, look, your worldview is clearly contradictory, so therefore it's false, that they couldn't sort of say the same thing to me, if they were able to isolate some of these pressure points, where there does seem to be it does seem like we're really committed to two contradictory theses.
something. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like you're constantly trying to revise your picture in the light of certain arguments, So once there's a problem that's been exposed because of some objection, you then have to figure out, how do I revise the picture to accommodate this objection? Because it seems kind of like hard to drop everything all at once and start from scratch, right? You're going to try to just preserve what you can, So it could be the case that it is often true that theists just do sort of drop a huge chunk all at once if they deconverge, right? All of a sudden, a big, a whole lot of stuff collapses at one time. But I guess that can happen in the atheist camp too, like if you adopted non-naturalism about certain properties like intentional. If you were a materialist, right, and then all of a sudden you began to think materialism was completely untenable, and then embraced kind of non-naturalist view about various properties like intentionality, agency, value, identity, and so on, then it seems like, in a certain sense, it's a little bit like a deconversion experience for a theist, deconverting from materialism to some atheistic form of non-naturalism.
Yeah.